Welcome to our deep dive into the world of AI, artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's incredible how fast it's all happening.
It really is. I mean, some say it's moving faster than like the internet boom even.
Maybe even faster. Yeah. And that's what we're going to be looking at today.
Yeah, we're going to be diving into a recent podcast episode all about the ethics of AI.
Sounds fascinating.
And they brought up some really interesting points, like the potential of AI to change the world in huge ways.
For sure. Like in healthcare, they talked about how AI could simulate drug trials.
Virtually, right.
Yeah, so we could test thousands of combinations way faster than we can now.
Imagine that, finding cures for diseases we thought were incurable.
Exactly. And then for climate change, they discussed how AI could create these like hyper-efficient energy models to optimize how we use energy.
Wow. So curing diseases and saving the planet AI sounds pretty amazing.
Right. But hold on, because there's another side to this.
Oh, there's always another side.
There is. The podcast also highlighted some serious concerns. One big one is control and ownership of data in AI systems.
Yeah, because AI needs data to learn.
Exactly. But who gets to decide what data is used and who has access to it?
Right. It's like who benefits and who might get left behind.
That's the question. For example, if the data used to train an AI is biased,
Oh, I see. Like if certain groups are underrepresented.
then the AI might just amplify those existing inequalities.
So it's not just about the tech itself, it's about how it's developed and who has a say.
Absolutely. And that leads to another concern. They brought up autonomous weapons.
Autonomous weapons sounds a bit like a sci-fi movie.
It does, but it's becoming a reality. We're talking about weapon systems that can make decisions.
Without human intervention.
Yeah, and that raises all sorts of ethical and practical questions, like who's accountable if something goes wrong?
And what about unintended consequences?
Right. There's a bit of a Pandora's box.
Definitely. And speaking of tough decisions, the podcast also discussed AI being used in areas like healthcare and policing.
High-stakes areas, right?
Right.
Where AI could be making life-altering decisions.
Exactly. Like imagine an AI helping doctors make diagnoses.
That could be incredible. But we also need to think about transparency.
Yeah. How do we know the AI is making fair and accurate decisions?
And what role should humans play in overseeing these systems?
It's like we can't just blindly trust a machine without understanding how it works.
Totally. And that's where explainable AI comes in.
Explainable AI.
It's about making sure AI systems can show their work so we can understand their reasoning and spot any biases or errors.
So it's like having a window into the AI's decision-making process.
Precisely. It's about holding these systems accountable.
This is all so fascinating and a bit overwhelming, to be honest.
I know, right? AI is such a huge topic with so many different angles.
And I bet our listeners have a ton of questions, too.
I'm sure they do. Like, how do we regulate all of this? What about the role of big tech companies?
And what about the really big philosophical questions like AI consciousness? Is that even possible?
These are all things we need to grapple with, and we'll do just that in the next part of our deep dive.
So stay tuned, because we're just getting started. So last time we were talking about how AI could change the world for the better, but also all the challenges that come with it.
Yeah, like the whole data thing.
Yeah.
Who controls it? Who owns it?
And how do we make sure AI is used responsibly and doesn't just make existing problems worse?
Exactly. Like it's not just something off in the future either. It's happening now.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, AI is already all around us.
Think about like your streaming service recommending stuff you might like, or how your email filters out spam.
Oh, and facial recognition, too. My phone unlocks with my face, and I see it used for security all over the place.
Exactly. AI is already woven into our lives.
Yeah.
But it does raise some tricky questions.
Yeah, like with facial recognition. What happens to all those images of our faces? Who has access to them?
Right. It's convenient and maybe even makes us safer. But there's that privacy concern, too.
It feels like we're constantly weighing those trade-offs now.
We are. And the podcast we've been discussing had some advice for dealing with all this.
What kind of advice?
Well, they kept saying, stay curious. Keep asking questions. Don't just blindly accept what you see online.
Because algorithms are shaping what we see all the time.
Right. And it's easy to get stuck in a filter bubble where you only see stuff that reinforces what you already believe.
So how do we break out of that?
By actively searching for different viewpoints, questioning our assumptions, and remembering that AI systems can have biases built in.
Okay, so question everything. Got it. What about all this data that's being collected about us?
Yeah, that's the fuel that powers AI. AI algorithms need data to learn.
So it's important to think about who's collecting it, how they're using it, and if we have any control over it.
Exactly. Because once it's out there, it's hard to get it back.
That's scary. A podcast also talked about supporting groups pushing for ethical AI and stricter regulations. Makes sense. Regulations can help set some boundaries right.
Think of it like traffic laws. We have those to prevent chaos and keep everyone safe on the roads. We need similar rules for AI.
But AI is changing so fast. How can regulations keep up?
That's the million-dollar question. Regulations have to be flexible enough to adapt, but also strong enough to prevent misuse. It's a tough balance.
And it's not just one country's problem either. AI development is happening globally.
Exactly. We need international collaboration to set global standards. So ethical considerations aren't ignored in the race for AI dominance.
It's like with those autonomous weapons we were talking about earlier.
Right. Imagine one country starts using them without thinking about the ethics. It could set off a global arms race with terrible consequences.
That's why we need agreements on this stuff.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And education is crucial too. The more people understand how AI works, the more they'll demand safeguards.
So we need to teach people about AI, not just the tech stuff, but the ethics and the impact on society.
It affects us all. It's not just for tech experts.
We all need to stay informed, not just take the word of tech companies or governments.
Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one, and don't be afraid to ask questions. The more we know, the better decisions we can make about the future of AI.
Because we're shaping that future. It's not just happening to us. Okay, so we've talked about AI's potential, the risks, and some ways to deal with them. But there's another even bigger question.
The big one. Can machines actually become conscious? And if so, what does that mean for us?
Now we're getting into some deep philosophical territory.
That's where we're headed next, so get ready.
All right, so we've talked about how AI is already changing the world and all the ethical questions that come with it. But now we're going even deeper. We're talking about AI consciousness.
Can machines actually think and feel? That's the big question.
It's like something out of a sci-fi movie, right? Robots becoming self-aware.
Right, but it's not just science fiction anymore. It's a real possibility we need to consider.
And the podcasts we've been discussing really push listeners to think about this. What if AI gets so smart that it develops self-awareness emotions, maybe even the ability to suffer?
Whoa, that's heavy stuff.
It is. It brings up huge ethical questions. Like, if an AI is conscious, does it have rights? Should we treat it like a person?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The podcast really dove into those questions.
Yeah.
It got me thinking, what makes something worthy of moral consideration? Is it intelligence? Self-awareness?
Because right now, our laws and our whole ethical system are built on the idea that humans are the only ones with those qualities.
But what if AI surpasses us in those areas? What if it can feel emotions, have relationships, create art? Do we owe it the same respect we'd give another human?
It's mind-blowing to think about. And it's not just about whether we should treat AI with respect, but whether we'll even be able to control something that might be smarter than us.
Right. That's where the idea of artificial general intelligence, or AGI, comes in.
AGI?
Yeah, it's the idea of an AI that's not just good at one specific task, but has the same general intelligence as a human, or even greater.
So not just a computer that can beat you at chess, but one that could write a novel, compose a symphony, maybe even run for president.
Exactly. The possibilities are incredible, but also a bit scary. The podcast argued that we need to start thinking about these scenarios now before they become reality.
Because if we wait until we're facing a super intelligent AI, it might be too late to set any boundaries.
It's like we need a whole new rule book for a world where humans aren't the only intelligent beings.
It's humbling to think about.
It is, but it's also exciting. The future of AI isn't set in stone. We're shaping it with every decision we make, every question we ask.
So what's the takeaway you hope listeners get from all of this?
That AI is more than just lines of code and algorithms. It reflects our values, our hopes, and our fears. And the future of AI depends on us engaging with it thoughtfully and ethically.
Wow, well said. So we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive. We talked about the amazing potential of AI, but also the very real risks and how we can try to mitigate those.
We even went down the rabbit hole of AI consciousness.
Yeah, that was a trip. But it's important to have these conversations now while we still have time to shape the future of AI. It's up to all of us to decide what role we want AI to play in our lives and in the future of humanity.
So stay curious, stay informed, and keep asking those tough questions.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI. And remember, the future is in our hands.